doctor Rachel Naomi Raymond, who has developed retreat for people with cancer. And she described it this way: helping, fixing, and serving represent three different ways of seeing life. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. When you serve, you see life as whole. Fixing and helping may be the work of the ego, and service the work of the soul. As a psychologist, I've tried to offer that service and that work of the soul, going back to what the Association of Black Psychologists have discovered when they looked at the ancients in Africa, that service to the soul. In psychology news, recently, from the Associated Press on June 3rd of this year, from Paris, tennis professional Naomi Osaka dropped out of the French Open because news conferences caused her huge waves of anxiety, as she said. Also, according to Sports Illustrated, since 2018, Miss Osaka has suffered from long bouts of depression. AP also went on to highlight that she has taken a leading role in protesting the deaths last year of George Floyd and other black people who died at the hands of police, wearing a mask with different victims' names on each match day at the 2020 U.S. Open. She was named the 2020 AP Female Athlete of the Year. So from August 2020, and this is still going into statistics from the AP article, from August 2020 to February, the percentage of adults with recent symptoms of anxiety or a depressive disorder increased from 36.4% to 41.5%, according to a survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Census Bureau. Now, I'm done reading some of this psychology news. I'm taking off my glasses here and thinking about our students, where I work here in Alabama at Oakwood University, but former students who I know at some of the Cal State universities that I work with, or other historically black colleges, who've gone through significant challenges in their life, and those challenges have been exacerbated by the shutdown with the pandemic, but also the loss of life in people that they knew during the pandemic. So people are struggling. But it's been interesting to watch how they've been more ready to disclose their challenges, as Miss Osaka did, taking to the internet to write out her challenges and to be able to state with a purpose what her concern has been in relation to her profession and her anxiety. She knows that she needs to perform, not just on the court, right, which is her day-to-day job, which is what she's there and paid to do, but also at a press conference. And I've even seen some people say, hey, if you didn't like that part of the job, that's it. But really, she's not paid to be your puppet. But that's just me getting ahead of the conversation. I'm really interested in disclosing mental health in public. So the National Alliance on Mental Illness has some suggestions about disclosing to others, which I think are important. And again, I'll say that because I really want people to take advantage of this resource. The National Alliance on Mental Illness, they're one of the best grassroots, or at least locally based organizations that provide people help, particularly families who are dealing with a family member who's disclosed or they know about this person with mental illness. So when you're unwell, they suggest that you tell the most supportive person in your life, right? They also suggest that wait until you're well before you disclose to a broader group of people. But when it first starts, you got to tell somebody who's supportive in your life. Sharing about your mental illness is important, and being aware that you have a mental illness is sometimes the first start. Sometimes people may not notice because you're able to really keep it amongst yourselves or with that close circle. But when it does come about, you need to at least acknowledge that this may be a result, this behavior that's troubling may be a result of the mental illness that I'm living with. Definitely tell close family members, definitely tell friends. But most importantly, again, you've got to be clear with yourself so you can get help. And this is one thing that I really liked from NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. You are an expert in your own mental illness, so you will know when you're getting better, right? You're an expert in your own mental illness. So that gives you kind of a baseline. Like, you went into this with some challenges. Now you know that you're getting better once you start receiving help. So I'm going to give an example, but it's really going to be from my life. I've found that even as a psychologist who understands, I have to be careful about who I tell about my mental illness and how I do it. For me, I do it to reduce stigma, because I know that there's many people out there who could be receiving help but aren't receiving help because they feel ashamed of having anxiety or depression or any other kind of mental illness. So I've been fully aware of my issues for 20 years. But prior to that, I wasn't as clear about what was going on. So I was generally aware that the colloquial phrase amongst psychologists or people who work with him, psychologists have issues, right? And so, my friends may say this kind of tongue in cheek or, just, in passing. However, a 2016 Psychology Today article confirmed that an estimated 49.5% of psychologists in the United Kingdom have had depression, which was similar to a 1994 survey of American psychologists found that 61% reported being depressed and 29% had suicidal thoughts. Man. And so this just brings me back to a time when I entered graduate school and I heard those numbers. And in 1995, I can recall back now, given kind of what happened, I had my first depressive episode I was aware of, but I didn't tell anyone. However, in 2000, while working on a list of depressive issues for a client, I realized I was depressed and I started seeking treatment. Now, what the trigger was interesting, was just the cumulative effect of experiencing secondhand trauma of watching some of my students get arrested and even a couple of parents get arrested, dealing with DCFS cases where children were being abused or neglected. And I just taken that on and thinking, man, I'll be all right because my family life is pretty stable. I'm not worried about those things, but it really did impact me. It was another 10 years before I disclosed my mental health issues online, but back in 2000, there wasn't a lot of social media other than perhaps a blog or some other talking point like a chat board or something. But once I did, it was a great relief, and I was glad that I did it. But I did take some things in mind, right? And similar kinds of things from NAMI. And here's some recommendations. Tell people when you are well, and sit down in a calm environment when you're able to talk with them, particularly if you need to, like when it serves a purpose. And here's the second recommendation here. Whether it's your relationships, your work life, school, the gym, but do so if it serves a purpose. Don't just do so just because you need to get it off your chest, as the phrase goes. Work in particular, it's important that you know your legal rights if you do disclose something like this. Some places still have laws in the books that if you're performing a certain duty, you can't have or be suffering from at the time some type of mental illness. So also know in relationships, and here's the fourth recommendation, that it can go three ways, right? If you disclose to your significant other, the relationship may stay the same, it may end, or it can slowly fade. However, the constant is that you can stay true to you. So talk with your mental health provider about how you're going to disclose in a relationship. Finally, and this is the fifth recommendation, when you're ready, make a pro and con list for disclosure in areas in your life, right? What's going to work well, what's going to not work so well. Okay. Naomi had some other recommendations about how to talk about this. And so you share the process by which you want to talk about it before you talk about exactly what it is. So you can get a sense of how safe you can feel when you're discussing this. Give concrete examples, because a lot of people may not be familiar with mental health. They may really still have kind of these old ideas that it's a weakness or a personal failing, like lack of sleep, skipping important meetings, crying more frequently, or even worse yet, suicidal thoughts. provide suggestions for those close to you on ways to support you. Don't just drop this on them and not, give them something, especially when they really care about you. For example, ways to bring them into your social support network, right? Whether it's kind of, helping you monitor your meds or it's some other kind of thing. Remember, you do not have to share everything. For me, it is the behaviors that people may see at work, but it may interpret as my indifference towards something. But sometimes I'm really just protecting myself and protecting my boundaries, similar as Miss Osaka did. And she said, press conferences can be overwhelming for me. And she's trying to seek out ways in which to make it better for other athletes and other people who she is working with. And so I've talked about these recommendations, and I still have a little bit more time here. But I'm really hoping that I can encourage someone who's out there who's struggling with mental illness and not quite sure how to disclose it to close family members, those in a relationship. I just want you to know that you're not alone. And that's the main reason why I share on social media. I really felt that I was alone for a long time, whether it was in my personal relationships and people just did not understand, or my family, and disclosing it and knowing that there were other people out there on social media just really helped. I don't tell everything, right? I don't tell all the different thoughts that I may have or all the kind of symptoms that I may be going through, unless I feel that someone's genuinely asking, and I might share that, through a message or through a phone call, especially if I feel that I can help them. But I really still try to refer people to good people in their area so they can get that help. So one of the ways that I'll leave with, and 3 ways that I do that, is I connect them with the directory of the Association of Black Psychologists. I also might look at the directory of the American Psychological Association. Psychology Today does a really great job of narrowing down people within your geographic area, people who may be from your same religious or ethnic background, or just people who might specialize in a particular issue that you might be going through. But making those referrals, I think, is a big part of helping reduce the stigma in relation to mental health. And I do that at least 2 or 3 times a week. And it's largely, I think, because I don't practice as much anymore as a psychologist, but I'm very open about sharing about mental health and getting great help for young people, for families, for fellow colleagues and adults who are struggling with the stress of life right now. And I think as we've lived through this COVID era, I think that's all the more important. All right. Next time, and for more content, man, check out drbrandongamble.com. I'm at Dr. Brandon Gamble on Facebook. Also, Our Black History Podcast is on Apple, as well as we have a Facebook page. And The Goal Doctor is another set of podcasts that I have on Facebook as well. We're on Spotify, Spreaker, YouTube, and I have a new webpage for The Goal Doctor called goaldoctor.net. Once again, that's goaldoctor.net. So join me next week as we talk about the latest in psychology, news, concepts, and recommendations, and what is going on in the psychologist's mind. Have a great day.